All right. Hi there. Good evening, Natalia. How are you? Is everything okay?
Hi, yes, all is good.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. That's great to know. We have to continue with our lesson. All right, and we're going to start to finish the part for affirmative ideas, and then we go to the negative part. Okay, remember that we are covering the structure SS to talk about adjectives,
Mhm.
to mention adjectives, adverbs, or nouns, and to compare people, ideas, objects, anything you have in mind. Right? So, before starting, actually, I would like you to tell me, please, what you remember about this, Natalia. What do you remember about everything we did on Monday regarding this lesson?
Mhm. You can use as in three cases with nouns, adverbs, and adjectives. And you have to put it in these words in the middle of as.
All right, that is correct. Let's try to give three examples, right? One example with an adjective, one example with an adverb, and one with a noun to see how we remember that.
Mhm. Um, this the sun is uh, as so shiny than as yesterday. Uh,
All right, I'm not sure about the adjective. Let's repeat the adjective in between SS, please.
the sun as shiny as yesterday.
Yes. Yes, great. The sun is as shiny as yesterday, as bright, but shiny is good. Because the sun shines. Yes, so yes, that's one. That's an adjective. One with an adverb, please,
Mhm. Mm, he ran as slowly as a turtle.
All right, in that case, just one detail is the verb in what tense is the verb? Is it in present, past, or future? Because I think the idea is correct, but a few details.
Uh, in past, run.
Okay, so it's going to be more like a, right? Because if you say run, that's present, right? R-U-N, that's run.
Uh,
But in past, it's going to be ren, right? With a,
ran.
the ren. Okay,
Mhm.
here ren, as slowly, yes, as a turtle. So that's one adverb in that case. Yes. And one final, please, one with noun. It can be a countable or uncountable noun. Natalie. It's up to you.
Mhm. Um, I am drinking as much water as the last summer.
Okay, yes, it is also correct. Good. All right. So the only thing, again, I know that perhaps you're still a little bit insecure of how you say those details, but your examples were correct. Okay, it's just
Mhm.
that little by little, as you practice more and more, that's going to be more natural. But yes, in those cases, it's correct.
Mhm.
Remember, any adjective, right, as him, right? They are as intelligent as them. We are as social, right, as the other group, right? Any adjective. Then adverb, always an action, right? Don't describe anything that is not an action. Your example, it was good. He ran, right, as slowly as something else or someone else, or as before, as yesterday, then right, remember the examples that I gave you also on Monday, right? It can be with sing, for example, she sings as beautifully, right, as her mother. Then they, you can say they always, they finish the project as quickly as they could, right? They finish the project as quickly as they could. Then remember that some of them are not going to have let's say ly, or they are just going to be like that, for example hard, right? So you can say he treated me as hard as before. Okay, so in that case we don't say hardly because it's something else, right? The same with fast. We know it's a
Mhm.
common example, but you say, right, they always, right, do everything as fast as they can, right? Because we don't say fastly. So just knowing those rules, remember that you have some exceptions. You have that presentation, so you can check the presentation for adverbs to be sure that most of them change to ly, but some of them are exceptions, right? Hard, fast,
Mhm.
early, right? Late. Those are some examples of adverbs that don't follow the rules that we know. All right. But
Mhm.
again, that's something extra because this presentation is not about adverbs. So again, we have to practice, but we're going to try to finish first the presentation. Then we can have some extra presentations about adverbs. So the thing that I want to do now to start the class or this to continue this presentation actually is reading one more time nearly. All right. We're not going to give examples. Let's just read to remember this, please, Natalia.
Mhm. Nearly. When we use nearly to modify positive as sentences, the meaning are different, small differences. Nearly. With a positive as structure, nearly shows a small difference. David is nearly as tall as Michael. A small difference. Michael is only a little taller than David. Compare this with the negative sentences. David isn't nearly as tall as Michael. Big difference. Michael is much taller than David.
Good. So we already practiced this. We're going to practice in a moment with writing examples, okay? It's because the last time I was only speaking. But before practicing this, remember this is
Mhm.
small difference when it's affirmative, big difference when it's negative. That's the only thing we have to know, right? When it's used in an affirmative idea, it is going to be small and the opposite is going to be big, all
Mhm.
right? But let's continue again, and then we're going to write examples with this, but also with this. Now here, in this case, Natalia, these words, they don't have a translation, and actually they don't mean anything. The only reason for you to use quite and just here, Natalia, is to put emphasis. That's it. There's no translation in Spanish. All right, it's just to put
It's
again more
like a
emphasis
such.
to this. No, not even, because such can be translated in a certain way, but it also gives intensity. Can be like that, but you followed only this rule. Anytime you want to put emphasis on your idea, you are going to use just or quite. Okay, because remember, this is for emphasis. Such more than emphasis, it was for intensity, right? They were intensifiers, and they added intensity to something. All right, she was such a beautiful girl, right? That's more intensity to something. But the difference between that intensity and this emphasis is just saying, hey, I'm saying this, I want you to pay attention to the next word. Okay, I want you to pay attention to this idea, and that's the only thing that you are saying over here. It's not going to be perhaps intense, it's only going to be like receiving the attention from the person to whom you are saying this. All right, and again, if you try to translate this, they are going to give you alternatives. But the best way to understand this, Natalia, again, is that you are only going to use just and quiet before your comparisons when you only want to put emphasis on this idea. All right, but let's try to understand by reading the definition and example, and then we see how it goes.
Mhm. Quite and just. using quite and just for emphasis if we want to emphasize that two things are the main. For example, because the person we are speaking to may not accept what we are saying. We can use quite and just. You're a terrible tennis player. I'm just as good as you. This phone is quite as good as that one, even if it does cost less.
All right. Now here, if you analyze the reason why this person, for example, here is using just is to say, hey, I'm as good as you, right? But to put emphasis in I'm as good as you can say I'm just as good as you. All right. So again, it's only emphasis. It's giving more attention to this idea. Okay. It's not anything new. It's not adding any translation. It's not adding again anything special, but this emphasis for this, because you can simply say, I'm as good as you. Okay. And that's correct. But again, this is just adding that idea of emphasis. The same here, you can say, this phone is as good as the one, right? Even if it does cost less. But you're transmitting this idea with some emphasis to say it's quite as good as the one, all right, or that one, even if it costs less. Again, and this idea is just one more time to say the other person, to tell him or her to pay attention to what you're going to say. All right, there's no other special meaning, and that's the only usage for this structure here, Natalia. Now again, you're going to ask me the questions. Let me see if we have that. Yes, that's for equality. Now we're going to practice two things. The only two things we're going to practice are nearly and quite and just. But let me know please the questions or comments that you have before going to the practice, please.
Quite and just are synonyms, or you using specific cases?
Yes, no, here, no, here you can say I'm quite as good as you, or I'm just as good as you, and it's the same. They are synonyms in this case.
Okay, and always is before as, before the word as, the first
Yes.
as.
Yes, I work just as well as you. It can be also with adverbs, but it's going to be before the structure as. That's correct.
Okay.
All right. So let's work on 4 examples, please, Natalia. The 4 examples are going to be 2 examples with nearly, right? One affirmative to show a small difference, one negative to show big difference, and one example with quite and one with just. Okay, so a total of 4 examples. And in this case, quite and just, to show this emphasis in Natalia, they have to be in affirmative. Okay, in affirmative sentences. All right, so let's do them, please. The document is in the same place, Natalia. Let me know when you're there, ready to start.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, so I'm going to be then controlling the time. So we will have 4 minutes. In those 4 minutes, we check what we got and we continue working.
And will you put the first slide?
There you go.
And can you change for the next slide, please? Mm,
Okay, so as you're finishing, we're the 4 minutes. Try to finish and
yes.
check those last ideas, and we read. Okay, so I think you're there. So let's read those 4 elements, please, Natalia.
Yes. The building is nearly as high as the other one, and the weather isn't nearly as cold as the last August.
Mhm.
Continue.
Yeah, that one is good. Because if you say the last August, remember that's not necessary, as last August is perfect. Just be careful with the capital letter, right? But let's continue. Let's finish everything first.
Okay. And that dessert is just as delicious as of your mom's desserts. This place looks quite as beautiful as always.
Okay, great. Now again, the only two observations, the one I told you,
Mhm.
remember this one with capital letter. And again, it's good like that. It's perfect like that. Remember to say the last week, the next week, that's Spanish, right? That's a Spanish
Mm,
translation to English. In English, just I'll see you next week, right? Not the next week. I did that
mhm,
last week, right? Not the last week or the last August, right? It's only last August, and
mhm,
that's perfect. Then here also, this is direct from Spanish. If you say as of your mom's desserts,
mm.
of actually it's the possessive in Spanish, but that possession in English is this es. Okay, so you don't
Okay.
need of. It's going to be
Mhm,
directly. That dessert, right, is just as delicious as your mom's. All right, and even
mhm.
this is going to be optional. You can simply say as your mom's. We understand that that's the possession for the next part. Okay, so this is
Okay.
going to be optional. All right, and you can say something like, again, that car is as expensive as Peter's, right? And we know we're talking
Mhm,
about Peter's car. All right, then this place is
mhm.
quite as beautiful as always. All right, so yes, I have no observations. Again, remember that you're going to use the last two just when you want to put emphasis. To use it every time is not going to be common. Again, just when you want to put that idea. But that's it. All right, that's it for the
Mhm.
affirmative ideas that we got. I don't know if you have any questions or comments before going to the next one. That is going to be inequality. This is going to be short, and also we're going to cover something we saw before.
Mhm. No, I don't have question.
All right. So let's then start reading this, please, Natalia. Inequality adjectives.
Mhm. We can show that two things are not equal using not plus as plus adjective plus as. When we use this structure, the first thing mentioned is less than the second thing. The order of the things you are comparing is opposite to that used in comparisons with comparative adjectives. This one isn't as big as the old one. The old one is bigger than this one. Jenny's new flat isn't as nice as her old now one. Jenny's old flat is nicer than her new one. Paris isn't as big as Tokyo. Tokyo
Okay,
is bigger than Paris.
great. Thank you. Now, again, this is easy. This is just the opposite, right? If you write negative ideas with the structure SS, it means that there is a difference, right? There is inequality. If it's affirmative, equality, right? This one is as big as the old one, equal. This one is not as big as the old one. It's not equal, right? So it's just common sense. If it's affirmative, if it's negative, of course, the meaning is different. That's the only thing they are telling you here, all right? That's the only thing. Again, you can stop me at any time. But this word, remember, how do you read this word one more time, Natalia?
Mention it.
But remember, if you say mention it, it's like the N is very strong. But remember, the only way in which we read it is going to be with a T or a D, right? When the last consonant is a D or a T. But we don't have a D or a T, it's only an N. So it's going to be only mentioned, right? Mentioned, just like that. So let's repeat one more time, please. Yes, great.
Mentioned.
There you go. So just that, all right? That element. Let's keep going. Now, of course, it also works with adverbs, all right? And again, the rule, remember, always action verbs, always things that are obviously happening and you can see how they are happening. So let's read, please, these inequality adverbs.
We can use the as structure to compare actions. Again, the order of the things compared is the opposite to that in a comparison with comparative adverbs. It doesn't work as well as we hoped. We hope it will work better than it does. Michael didn't play as well this week as he did last week. Michael played better last week than he did this week.
Thank you, Natalia. Again, here, there's not a thing that is new. It's the same as the affirmative ideas, but it's negative, right? And of course, if it's negative, it's going to show inequality, right? If you say he runs as fast as her, is equality, right? But if you say he doesn't run as fast as her, that's inequality, right? That's the only thing. Again, if you change that to negative, is going to show that there is difference. All right. Only one word over here also. You pronounce it correctly in the previous one, but here you changed. Remember, this is only going to be E, right? So instead of opposite, it's only going to be the opposite. All right. So let's repeat that one, please.
It's opposite.
Opposite, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, you read it like that in the previous one. Opposite, it was correct. And here you said opposite, right? So we have to change that. Exactly. Yes, that's the only thing. All right, opposite. There you go. We have more nouns. The same, right? It's the same that we did with the affirmative ideas, but in negative. Let's read only to remember, please, these details.
And the as structure is often used with quantity expressions such as much and many. This form doesn't have as many features as the other one. The other form has more features than this one. My ticket didn't cost as much as yours. Your ticket cost more than mine.
Thank you very much. Again, here is the idea of using many and much. All right, again, we know that in this case, we're going to keep going. We are showing only that they can be used in negative form to show that something is unequal. All right, it's different from something else. And I believe this is going to be the last one. Yes, this is the last one. Here, you're going to use one more time something that you know, Natalia, nearly. You know that when it's used in negative, is big difference. But you have another alternative, and also you have emphasis for negative ideas with a small difference. Okay, so let's read this, please. Emphasis with nearly, nowhere, and quite.
Mhm. When we want to show that there is a big or a small difference between the things being compared, we can use the adverbs nearly, now, nowhere, near, and quite, emphasizing a big difference. England isn't nearly as big as Russia. England is now nowhere near as big as Russia. Russia is much bigger than England, emphasizing a small difference. My flat isn't quite as big as Jenny's. Jenny's flat is a bit, slightly bigger than mine. The journey didn't take quite as long as it did last time. The journey took, no, the journey took a bit, slightly longer last time.
All right, thank you very much, Natalia. So you know nearly, if when it's negative, big difference. Now, nowhere near is exactly the same. And of course, this is, let's say, affirmative quotation marks, but of course, this no makes it negative, right? So England is nowhere near is the same as England isn't nearly the same. Okay, here they are synonyms. You don't have any difference. You don't have any details that you have to pay attention to say nearly or to say nowhere near. No, they are the same. Okay, 100% the same. That's why the translation for the two of them is Russia is much bigger than England. All right, that's the
Nowhere
only
near
thing.
is negative.
Yes, always negative. If you see a no at the beginning of the word, it's going to make the entire idea negative. Mhm, correct.
You don't need
And
put isn't.
no, because it's going to be double negative and that's going to be incorrect. We don't have double negative, only one. Exactly. And it's common. All right. Some people say, I don't want nothing. And that's incorrect. In Spanish, we say that and it's correct in Spanish. Okay. People say, I don't want nothing. Right. But the correct form is, I don't want anything or I want nothing. Right. And the two of them are negative. Here the same. As we have nowhere, this has to be in an affirmative sentence, but the nowhere is going to make it negative. All right. So yes, in other words, again, this is always negative. All right. And we don't need the isn't or any other negative idea is going to make that incorrect. Okay. So we cannot use doesn't, we cannot use didn't, we cannot use anything that has a not, only nowhere. All right. And on the other hand, you have quite. Remember, quite in affirmative ideas is to put emphasis on something affirmative, right? I'm quite as good as you are. But if it's in negative, it shows a small difference. All right, that's the only thing. So for big differences in negative ideas, nearly and nowhere near. For small differences, quite. And that's it. All right, if you know that, again, you know all the degrees and variations for these words, Natalia. Let me know, please, if you have any questions or comments so that we can go to the practice for the negative ideas. Let me know, please.
Quite or just for a small difference?
In
Or
this case, isn't just as big. No, it's going to be better for this small difference. Just is mainly going to be used in affirmative ideas. Quite, only quite here. All right, it can be used with just, but quite is the best option in this case.
Mhm.
All right, but again, you can put it, but remember, there's always a word that is going to be the best option in any structure that you have, right? In this case, quite the best alternative in this. All right, I don't know if you have any other questions or comments.
I don't remember the last slide. I I want to
In the previous one, yes.
yes. I was thinking that always you use does or did in that cases.
If it depends, right? Because remember, as you are having here, mm, it can be with the verb to be. It can be isn't or aren't or wasn't or weren't, anything actually, as long as you're going to use countable or uncountable nouns. For example, remember the expression there is, there are? That's with the verb to be. And you can say in affirmative, there is, right, as many people as yesterday. There is. And you can change that to there isn't. There isn't as many people, or there aren't, sorry, in this case, there aren't as many people as yesterday. Okay, so you can use the verb to be. You can use also this in past with the verb to be, right? There weren't as many people as last week, for example. All right, even
Mhm.
it can be in future, right? There won't be, right, as many people as today, for example. Okay, so not only doesn't and didn't, it's going to be any verb as long as it makes sense with your countable or uncountable noun, Natalia. Okay, it's going to depend on the
Mhm.
sentence you're using, but anything, but it has to be negative.
Mhm.
All right, I don't know if you have any other details.
No.
All right, so let's see, right? Let's see how it goes, and then you're going to let me know if you have any questions. Now, remember, right? You have this for you also on the platform. Now, using this, because you're going to be changing a lot this in this time, Natalia, you're going to write this example. All right, first, let me see. This is the first one. Yes, one example of inequality, right? All of them are with inequality. So, one with an adjective, one with an adverb, one with a noun. Okay, you decide if it's countable or uncountable. One with, we know with nearly, so not nearly, one with nowhere near, and one with quite. Okay, so we need 5 in total. One more time, it would be one with adjective, one with adverb, one with noun, one with nowhere near, and one with quite. We have 5 in total, and all of them have to be, of course, negative to show inequality, big difference, or small difference. All right, let's do it, please, Natalia. Again, if you get to have any questions, let me know. If not, you can begin, and we're going to have 5 minutes to work on this. I'm going to leave it there. And just in case, again, if you get to have any questions, please let me know.
Mhm. Okay.
All right, good. So we'll begin with the time. Okay, so we're with the 5 minutes. We're going to see how it went. And again, according to that, we're going to be giving some. I think we're missing one. So let's finish that one that is missing, please. Natalia, you finish
Mhm.
and we check that.
With quiet, right?
Yes, that's correct. With quite in negative.
Okay, I finished.
All right, so I'm here with you. Let's read those 6 examples. Oh, sorry, those 5 examples, please.
Mhm. And the horses aren't as tall as the camels. The beach today isn't as comfortable as last weekend. My niece isn't eating as much food as before. Playing football is nowhere near as funny as basketball. The price of that dress isn't quite as different as yours.
Okay, great. Now, again, I believe everything is perfect, but we're missing one. Okay, why? Because we have two with adjectives, right? But we don't have
Oh.
one with adverbs. Okay, we're missing adverbs because this is great, right? Number one, great. This is adjective as tall as. Number two, this is good. Just be careful with the pronunciation. Remember, the O is going to disappear and the stress in the first part. So comfortable, right? Instead of comfortable,
Comfortable.
comfortable. But this is
Mhm.
also an adjective, right? Here, this is
Mm.
quantity, noun, perfect. Nowhere near, this is big. But remember, yes, no, this is great. This is big difference, and this is a small difference, right? It isn't quite as different as yours. So they are great, but we're missing only one that
Mm.
should come over here. So
Mhm.
let's do this now together, Natalia. How could it be? What could it be the one with adverbs that it has to be negative?
Um, mm, if I say the last night I feel as sleepy as yesterday.
In that case, close but sleepy is not an adverb. Sleepy is an adjective, and feel
Mm,
in that case is not an action verb. It is
mhm,
going to be only, remember, a linking verb, right?
mm,
It's like I feel good.
mhm,
Okay, so what else? What else could it be? Because again, it's like a description. Well, like when you
mhm,
say I am sleepy or I feel sleepy. All right, so again,
mhm,
that's an adjective.
mm. And the news on the TV as uh, no, I need is when I use is adjective, right?
Yes, you can use is, but if it's with an with the continuous form, right? But what you have to pay attention is that you need an action. Be sure that your subject can be a person, a group of people, something that creates action. All
Mhm.
right, and the verb is also an action because you can have the verb to be, but only if it's in the continuous form, right? Remember, you can say she is walking, right? And you have is, but is not the main verb. Is the auxiliary verb for walking. Walking, walk is the main verb, and that's an action. That's why with walk or walking, you can use an adverb,
Okay.
right?
If I say the news on the TV shows us sadly as old days.
Okay, could be, but show us what exactly, because that needs an object. Because the
Uh,
news, if you say the news as a subject, it's like you're talking about a group of people or something that is producing something. Okay,
the
and you're using
news
that
like
actively.
uh, the documentals, the different the news that you see on the TV.
Okay, yes, but in that case, you have to reformulate that because, again, in that case, it's active and you're saying that the news are doing something. Then you have to change your idea to say that the news are passive and that they are being shown in a certain way. Okay, so you should use in that case passive voice, right? Because if you only say the news show, right, because or shows, right, in that case, as sadly, it's not going to be correct because shows what, all right, because you're using that as active voice. You need to change that to passive voice. How can you change to
Mm,
passive voice?
mm.
In that case, you can try doing something. Remember, to use passive voice, there's always a rule. You always use the verb to be in the time or in the tense you want to be, and you show or you use, sorry, the verb, the main verb in the past participle. So instead of the news shows, right, you can say perhaps the news is shown. All right, so it's like someone else is showing the news in a certain way. Okay, and again, we are using is in this case because it is also um, non-countable, right, or uncountable. So remember, if it's going to be passive, always the verb to be and the main verb in the past participle, then you use the comparative in this case. So it can be the news is shown, right, as sadly as always could be. All right, so and that can be valid in a
Mm.
certain way. All right, that can be valid. So you can write that or you can think of a different example. What do you say?
I was trying to change, and if I say the TV shows as sadly as old days, I don't know if that's correct.
But in that case also something is missing, right? Because you're saying this and you're saying this, right? What's the last part? Let's repeat that
And
please.
the TV shows as sadly as old days.
All right, or this I believe. This is what you're saying now. All right, so something is missing if you realize the
Mm,
TV shows us sadly as all days, but shows us what, right?
mhm.
Something is missing there.
Okay.
All right, that's
Mm,
why again it can be correct, but something is missing. And again, to avoid this, it's always good to talk about a direct action. All right, a direct action, because this is also direct, but you are again missing something. You are missing an object in this case.
Mhm.
All right, what else? Anything else that comes to your mind?
If I put the TV shows news as sadly as always, it have sense.
Okay, yes, the TV shows us the news as sadly as always it can be. The TV shows us, right? We are also the object. Shows us what?
Mhm.
The news or news, right?
Mhm.
And then you give the description. Yes, now in that case, it is correct. Okay, because if not, it's like in the chat. So let's try that, please, Natalia. The TV shows us news or the news as sadly as always. All right, but remember, it's not going to be sadly like. It's going to be, we need the comparison as, right?
Mhm.
Uh-huh. And in that case, again, all days can be good, but remember, all days, all remember that it's a word used not for a number of things, it's used for a quantity, okay, for all the class, all the day. But instead of that, it's better if you say every day, okay, as
Okay.
every day.
Mhm.
Because all days is going to be like the Spanish translation.
Mhm.
There you go. Okay, now it is working good. Why? Because to show something is going to be an action in this case. This is the object, and this is the way in which they are showing us the news. All right,
Mhm.
that's the idea. And again, this is something we have to practice, but we have to practice this separately. I don't know if you got to check the presentation about adjectives, or sorry, adverbs, Natalia, the one that we covered before from previous lessons.
No, I have to do.
All right, so do it when you have the time, all right, so that you're sure of using this correctly, all right, because I believe everything is
Mhm.
working good, but you're having some problems with the adverbs, only with the adverbs.
Mhm.
Just remember again that you always need an action for adverbs, and that you need to have that, I would say not the translation, but try to always think of this in a way in which something is happening. All right. And if you're using ideas like this, be sure that you have all the elements that you need to use, right? Some verbs always need objects. All right. Not all of them, but
Mhm.
some of them are going to need objects, as in this case. And it depends on what? On the way
Mhm.
in which you show that information. Right now, everything is correct. These 6 sentences are great. This one over here. So again, in general, it's pretty good. The only difficulty is with the adverbs. I don't know if you have
Okay.
any questions or details about the lesson in general.
No.
All right, there you go. Now, let's give at least a short introduction then to the next one. This lesson took us, all right, 2 classes, but we are going to go back by likely, actually, this is going to be for the next one because we are
Mhm.
going to cover this in one class. This is only going to be a review and a reminder for things that you have to practice because we already covered gerunds and infinitives. So it's going to be just a very short review and a reminder for the things that you have to still practice or write on your own. But let's please explain first, Natalia, what do you remember about gerunds and infinitives?
Yeah. Gerunds is when you use the ing at the end of the verb and express the action is happening in that moment. An infinitive is the base form of the verb, and you can is before you conjugate each verb.
All right. Okay, we're missing something in both. Again, I believe it's just because of the names, right? Remember, we use names in grammar, and I know that you know this. but the definition in this case was not correct. Why? Because if you tell me write a verb, and then if you tell me something happening now, that's not a gerund, right? Remember, and again, this is just because they are, that's the present participle, and that's present continuous, right? In I am traveling now, traveling is not a gerund. Traveling is the present participle, right? And that's an action. But remember that gerunds are not verbs, right? They come from verbs, but they are what? They are nouns, right? They act as nouns. They are not verbs. That's why also remember, this is very important, we can use gerunds as subjects, right? Dancing is my passion, right? Because in that case, it's not going to be a verb, it is going to be an activity, a noun. That's why we can also use gerunds as objects, right? When you say something like, I always enjoy playing with you. All right, so playing in that case, more than a verb, is going to be an activity, a noun. All right, so just remember that rule. And in this one, I have a question with infinitives. You said that is the base verb. It's partially okay, yes, but what else? Is the infinitive only the base form? Because the base form is only going to be eat or travel, but is the infinitive only that, or do we have something else?
You need put to before the verb.
Yes, exactly. And that's going to be important because, again, if we only have base form, the base form is used only in certain situations. And the infinitive, to plus the base form, that is the infinitive, right? It's going to be used in different situations, right? So actually, those are the three. I don't know if the chart is here. Yes, these are the three ways of writing a verb, right? Base form, it, infinitive, to it, and gerund. All right, but let's remember again that gerund is not continuous, is not happening now, is not a verb, is only a noun. That infinitive is always going to have the particle to, and the base form doesn't have any modifications, right? It's just the base form, right? The way it is. So,
but in this case,
was,
for example, when you say to eat is a verb and gerund is a noun in this list?
Gerund, yes, it's considered noun. It acts as a noun. It is form of a verb. It is part of a verb, but it is not working as a verb in that in the sentence. All right, because if that was the case, again, it's impossible to have a sentence with the verb, and complement, right? If you say that dancing is a verb, dancing is my passion, the structure would be verb, complement, right? And that's not possible. That's why dancing in that case, even though it's an activity, is not going to be considered as a verb, okay? Also infinitive, in some cases, it is going to be considered only an activity and not as a verb, all right? But again, it depends on how you interpret that in grammar. This is just in terms of grammar, all right? In terms of grammar, they are not considered that. But again, in a certain way, it's good understanding that because you can remember easily that the gerund can be used as object and as subject, and that's not going to be the case if it was a verb. Okay, so that's again something grammatical maybe.
And if I say I am running, no, it's a gerund.
No, that's the tense, the entire sentence is the present continuous, and the verb with ing after the verb to be is called the present participle. Okay, that's the name of the verb. Is the same. Is the same. If you say, for example, okay, and actually let's try it. I believe I wrote it once, but I'm going to do it again. And with this, we finish so that in the next class, we remember this. Here, right, I am running now, and okay, so here, this is not gerund. This is the present participle, all right? The tense is the present continuous, but the name of the verb, okay, only the name of that word is the present participle, all right? And here running is the same, right? Running, running, but no. Here the name is the gerund, of course. All right. And if you want to use again translation to help you out, that's why in Spanish this is different. In Spanish this is this, right? But in Spanish their gerund is just this.
Correct.
So that's why they are not the same. A gerund is not an action that is happening, is not a verb, it's only an activity. And now that's why you can use it with a verb, okay? And this is a verb. It's a conjugation of the verb, and the present participle can be used in the present continuous after the verb to be. Okay, so that is going to be very important because only the gerund can be used as a subject. Only the gerund can be used as an object after some verbs, as an object after some expressions, and as an object after all prepositions. Right? Remember, that's going to be the rule, after all prepositions. We are going to recap that, all right, in the next class. But I don't know if you have any questions first about this difference. If we get this difference, everything else is going to be easy. What do you say?
No, that's okay. I understand.
All right, good. Now again, try to take a look at the presentation, all right, first on your own, then on Friday. This is going to be only a short review because again, we covered this many times, but we have to reinforce the idea of gerunds and infinitives. And after we cover that, we're going to go to our main lesson that is going to be inseparable phrasal verbs, okay? Because this is going to be more important in this case. Okay. But that's it. If you get to have any questions as I'm sending the poll that is over here, let me know, please, Natalia. If not, when you finish with that poll, that's going to be it for today. All right. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you on Friday. All right.
Okay, perfect. See you on Friday.
Bye bye. See you. Bye bye.